I'm Meg Ritchie and I'm the stylist. Lip Talk, it was more about being able to give people an education on how they can do the things that I do and help them to sell their property.
Hi, I'm Nicole Carter. I'm the agent. We're like-minded mums that have kids and we all have our own businesses. Each girl brings something unique and dynamic to the deal.
Hi, my name is Marie Fedorov and I am the lawyer. So Meg is probably the brains behind this whole concept. Our goal is really to educate people about the problems that we come across on a daily basis.
It's actually going to appeal to different types of people, whether they're first home buyers, whether they're moms. It just feels like you're working with your best friends. So it's got a real good vibe to it and I think we all feel really comfortable. Hi, welcome to Lip Talk. I'm here today. I'm Meg Ritchie, the stylist. This is Nicole Carter, the agent, and Marie Fedorov, the lawyer. So today we're going to be talking about the real estate industry in general with the COVID trends and what's been going on for us all individually in our businesses. So starting with Nicole. Nicole, can you just give us a bit of an update on the real estate industry, what's going on, maybe open homes? Yeah, just give us a bit of an overview of what's been happening during COVID.
Yes, thank you, Meg. Obviously, it's been unprecedented times. I hate using that word because everyone's using it, but it's the truth. So for open homes over the last couple of months, we've certainly experienced a lot of changes. In Queensland in particular, the restrictions have been dropped now.
Yes.
So fortunately, we can go back to open homes. We still have to take precautions, which we are doing. So in terms of ensuring we've got hand sanitizer or gloves, masks, whatever buyers and sellers feel comfortable with, we ensure we have that, as well as signage in limited numbers through each property. So every single open home that we do, we now ensure we have that available, as well as private inspections.
Yeah.
So open homes remarkably have certainly been very, very popular, and our numbers are up on the Gold Coast, which is very promising, considering what other states are experiencing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I would certainly say right now it's more of a buyer's market. So we have a lot of buyers out there. Stock levels are actually quite low at the moment. So we are seeing an influx of more buyers, particularly ones who've probably sat on the sidelines for 6 weeks who couldn't get out and actually see properties. So for us, we're fortunate that the Gold Coast has actually been pretty still hot.
Yeah, yeah. So if it's a buyer's market, what are the sellers doing? Are they just holding off, do you think? I'll talk briefly about my predicament, but from yours, from selling, what's going on?
Look, a lot of sellers who need to sell at the moment, they have varying circumstances. So some were upsizing, some had to sell due to financial circumstances, or maybe they're possibly getting a divorce. So COVID hasn't really affected them hugely. What we are experiencing currently is the pricing for properties, particularly in the area where I work, have been pretty well maintained.
Yeah.
So the pricing hasn't come down. If anything, what I am experiencing is a lot of properties are selling off the market. So I'll be called in by a vendor, we'll chat through what our strategy will be for marketing, but because I already have a database of buyers that I work with, I'll be bringing them through before we even launch the property.
Right.
So we've had some huge success in terms of selling off the market before we officially photograph the property and put it on social media.
What about auctioning? Are auctions successful at the moment, or is that something that you would perhaps not recommend right now?
Look, in my area, they are not hugely recommended. We don't have a huge success rate. However, in other states, particularly Melbourne, Sydney, they're still hugely popular. And a lot of the auctioning has gone to an online platform.
Oh, really?
So you can still have the auctioneer available, have bidding available. There's some new platforms which have been introduced where you can bid online and on your phone, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So with COVID hitting us, there's been some very new, good, cutting-edge technology which has been introduced. So much so that even for some auctions, we've had buyers who can attend the auction and still be anonymous and bid on their phones.
Oh, wow.
So that's quite amazing how things have evolved, where you don't have to just bid with a number anymore. You can do it anonymously on your phone.
That's great. And I've
yes.
seen your technology that you've been using on social media. I'm not sure what it's called, but you're basically virtually taking people around
Yes.
through a property. Can you tell us about
I
that?
love
That's
that.
really
Yes,
cool.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, of course, like everyone who was affected pretty quickly, we had to adapt. So we do have access to a Matterport machine, which is a 3D machine.
Right.
So it really is a walkthrough of the property, and it allows you to go through every single room step by step. On a 3D virtual tour.
Wow.
So when COVID did hit us and we couldn't get into properties, we offered an extra service to all our sellers, and we went into their properties and actually did that for them as a courtesy. So for buyers who couldn't visit the property, or maybe they were stuck interstate, they could virtually walk through the property. So it's a great facility. It's been used in the States for many years, and we now have adapted that technology as well.
That's great. So COVID's been good for technology in the real estate world.
It has. We've all had to adapt, like both
Yeah.
of you in your businesses, Zoom meetings, of course, as well for staff.
Yes.
There was no teaching on it, was there? It was just
No.
you've
You
just
had
got
to
to learn
learn.
how to do it.
Yes.
And that's
Absolutely,
it.
yes.
Yeah.
And we've even used it for showcasing properties. Like I said earlier, I've had some buyers from Victoria, I've had buyers from Sydney who couldn't actually get to the Gold Coast, and we've done a live video, a live stream with them through the open home, and we've been successful as well with a few purchases. So buyers
Because
have-
you've sold houses without people even seeing them,
Yes,
hey? Because
yes.
I know that I have with staged homes.
Yes,
Wow.
You've got the
absolutely.
Sydney person you were telling us about.
Yes, well, the inquiry we've been getting from interstate buyers has been extremely high. So what we've been doing is setting up times with them to actually FaceTime them on the phone or Zoom or whatever's the preferred method that they want to use, and meet them at the property, walk them through, show them every room, talk about all the pros and cons of the house, whatever questions they have, and then we can do the contracts electronically, and we'll meet them face to face on the day of settlement when they can actually get here.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So is there any scenarios whereby you've had people that recently have bought outside of the Gold Coast, they haven't seen the property, or they've come and visited the property during COVID and all of the restrictions?
I have of late, the last few weekends, I've had one person from Victoria and one from Sydney, both which have purchased, ironically. So they weren't in hotspots, so they were able to actually fly in, fly out, which we had arranged. So that was quite interesting, because a lot of my vendors were also concerned as to who's walking through their
Of
home.
course, yeah.
Is it safe? What precautions are we taking? So we thoroughly, of course, go through that with a buyer
So
before
you
they
would
come
have
through.
heaps more work to do than normal, because you'd have had to
Absolutely.
check all of these people coming into these people's homes.
We do.
Yeah.
And of course, we ensure we get their full details, that we're able to have a trail if we do need to get hold of them again. So
Yeah.
that's been imperative
Well,
during
that's
this
comforting.
time.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned that interstate buyers, you're seeing that on the rise. Why do you think that is so?
Look, I think it's been a mix. Anyone who sees the Gold Coast as somewhere to retire, or they can make a life here, they have a good job, it's a great lifestyle, why wouldn't you want to live here? So now that things have changed a bit in different states, we have certainly seen there's been an increase in the positiveness on the Gold Coast. And if you don't just want an investment and you actually can transfer with your job, a lot of people are doing that as well. So, that's been very promising for us,
Yeah.
because our market seems to be a little bit hotter than what it was previously.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I guess people are working from home a lot more as well. So
Yes.
that probably provides a bit more flexibility, don't you think?
It does. What we're also finding is now buyers are wanting properties which do have a larger study, or what is the internet connection like, because now I'm
Yeah,
home 4
right.
days a week and I only go in one
Yeah.
day a week. So that's also changed a lot of lifestyles.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm seeing a bit of a pattern there in terms of the way buyers are purchasing homes and what they're looking for, because now they are at home more. And a lot of companies are not wanting to have huge offices, huge office space anymore because you can do everything from home.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that from a staging perspective.
Yes.
Whereas before, we would say that if you've got a 4-bedroom home and that 4th bedroom lends itself more towards a bedroom, people have been wanting to lend it more towards a study.
Yes.
So that they have the opportunity to work from home for that buyer. So, and then there's the trends that have happened as a result of COVID, where I've found that there's a lot of people that are going into rented accommodation. They're seeing how the market's going to do. So there's been an impact of people wanting to sell,
Yes.
staging their homes because they're going to go into rented, see how the market's going to lie, and then maybe look at buying again in
That's
6 to
it.
12 months' time.
We've also found that to be very popular. So while there's a bit of uncertainty as to people's jobs and the economy, where will we go if we do have the opportunity to sell and potentially get a good price for our property, let us rent and see what happens maybe towards Christmas, January time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
makes
whereas
sense.
historically this time of year is usually quite quiet.
Yes.
It's winter. Like the market's usually quieter this time of year, wouldn't you say? I found
Traditionally,
it to be, phenomenally busy.
It
And the
is.
Gold Coast in particular, with all the other states being in the situation they're in, the Gold Coast is pretty buoyant at the moment. And I think from what I can see, and I don't know about you, but people are wanting to invest in the Gold Coast because where else in the world would you want to live?
Yes, absolutely. Hence, we're all here.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty
so
amazing.
those people that have been waiting whilst COVID was really rife, I suppose, are now coming to the market, but they're seeing the benefits of that because the
Yes.
prices really haven't changed.
Absolutely.
Would you say?
We found the same, and the stock levels are still low. So what has happened is there's more buyers available and less stock to actually show there.
Yeah.
So
Right.
traditionally, if I would take a buyer around to see 3 or 4 properties, now I've only really got 1 or 2 that they need to pick.
Right.
So that's what's affected the marketplace as well for us. So this time of year is not our normal trend that we experience every single year. So this is my 14th year of doing this, and because COVID has affected, I think, all businesses, we're pushing as hard as we can up until the end of the year because we're a bit unsure as to what will happen moving forward.
What about people's finances, Nicole? Do you think that is having a bit of an impact on being able to borrow, to
Yes.
buy, refinance, all of those sorts of things? Are you seeing any of that?
Look, I've seen 2 things. Most buyers today are certainly going to see their mortgage broker or their bank up front. So we're finding that.
That's good.
Yes,
Yeah,
which is
that's
great news.
That's unusual. Like people going and seeing their mortgage brokers before they go and buy houses.
That's what you should do. Yes,
Definitely.
definitely.
They're getting pre-approved.
That's great.
They're not just coming through 20 homes and then when they see something doing the process. So we're finding they're doing more homework up front. Also, a lot of buyers, in fact, I've recently even had a seller who has experienced a slight problem with getting refinance as well because a lot of the banks have changed their policies since COVID.
Yeah.
So those are immediate changes which have come into play. So possibly 6 months ago, you could borrow X amount or you could get a certain percentage from your partner, depending on their job. And as things have changed, that's affected their borrowing capacity.
Also, types of income that's also
Yes.
changed, hasn't it? So I think we were talking previously about overseas income is now not being considered by some lenders.
That's
So,
absolutely right.
yeah,
And
so-
because we have a lot of overseas buyers that live on the Gold Coast, we've experienced this as a potential issue working with lenders. And now suddenly the banks are saying, well, of course we want to see your pay slip, so we want to make sure you've got a steady income in Australia, not income coming from overseas as well. So that's been something quite interesting we've had to address up front. So the best advice I could probably give you is if you are purchasing or you're thinking of selling, you're not sure what your plans are, is see the mortgage broker, see the bank up front so you know what position you stand in because that's changed pretty quickly over the
Yeah.
last 6 months.
And it's affected everybody. Like
Yes.
it's not just the people that might be claiming JobKeeper or JobSeeker. It's the people that may have been relying upon funds from overseas.
Yes.
So you've got like people that have got access to a lot of money, but then you've also got the other end of the market where they're claiming JobKeeper or job seeker, and they're at the other end of the market. So both have been affected, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I've seen with separated couples with their property settlements, that has also had a massive effect. So people who have lost their jobs or ended up on JobKeeper or Job Seeker, they were wanting to refinance the family home to buy out the other person, and then they aren't able to do so because the banks are changing their rules there, and then they no longer apply. So that has made lots of deals fall over, which has been something unfortunate that I've seen.
Yes, I'm sure.
And so, Marie, what about the valuations on those couples that might have been looking at separating, maybe 3 months ago in comparison to where they're at now? Surely all of that kind of has a bit of a knock-on effect.
That's been a really interesting one. Like, Nicole, you mentioned that property prices haven't really plummeted like I guess we thought they had. But valuers are definitely being a lot more conservative with their valuations because they're not sure where it might go. And obviously, if a bank is lending substantial amounts of money for someone to purchase or to refinance, they want to make sure that if the market does take a dive, that they can recoup their costs. And so that has definitely been had such an impact on couples and the deals that they essentially do because of that change. You're not sure if you're actually going to get that amount of money that you think you are.
So what were they doing previous to COVID that they're not doing now, as in the couples? Is there any pattern that's happened as a result of COVID?
Well, people were doing deals prior to getting any properties valued, and then they'll go and see the broker. So
when you say deals, what do you mean by deals? What were they?
So a husband and wife separate. They have a pool of property, and they need to work out who's going to keep what.
Okay.
So quite often they'll try and do that without seeking legal advice to save costs.
Yeah.
And they'll say, okay, well this is let's do a 50-50, and that may mean I keep my house, you keep your super, you keep the family business or whatever arrangement they've worked out, and then they'll go to refinance, and then the bank will do a valuation on the property, and it will come in at 15-20% lower than what they estimated the property to be worth. And so if you're going to be retaining that property and all of a sudden it's worth 15 to 20% less in accordance with a valuation that's been obtained, well, why would you? You want to get that extra 15-20% from somewhere. So then the deal falls over, and then we're squabbling over who's going to pay what and where it's going to come from. So it actually has caused quite a bit of, turmoil in the family law space in that regard. So really important to get advice from your mortgage broker about what you can borrow. Really important to get advice from a family lawyer in that situation to find out what you're entitled to. And realistically, those people should really speak and work out the best deal for you before you actually do the deal, so to speak.
Yeah. So going back to the pre-approval that Nicole said that people are doing, that's probably a really good bit of advice, that if you're in any of those circumstances, then you should really go and seek the right advice before you make the next move.
Beforehand, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the climate that we're in, we have to constantly just be checking in to see what policies are available, have laws changed. So it is one of those things we have to just keep a closer eye on, as opposed to just having a pre-approval for the next 6 months to a year. That's not happening anymore.
I mean, it's a really great time for us, for example, because it's that collaboration of, you go to the doctor when you're sick, and you know which doctor you want to see. Yes. If you've got a real estate agent that you want to speak to, then you're going to speak to them. You need to be asking them questions. If you've got a family lawyer, that it's really important at this time probably for people to have a collaboration with any of our industries so that you can call upon those people and ask any of these sorts of questions.
Definitely.
Because unfortunately, we're in a very changing world, and things can change from one day to the next. So COVID has been a really big example of how quickly things can change. I was just going to ask Marie about how that's affected people's sort of relationships. Do you feel like whereas before, when we've talked in the past about people trying to work things out, do you feel like they've been more pressurized into having to stay where they are instead of just normally pre-COVID, I guess, you know, the difficulties not being there?
I guess what I experienced was more so that at the start of COVID. So COVID hit, everyone really freaked out and weren't really sure what was going to happen. And so then we had a lot of people hit the pause button on relationships. Okay, well, hang on, now we're all going into isolation. Do I really want to be arguing with my, you know, the guy that's sleeping next to me or in the next room when I'm going to be stuck in this place for who knows how long? And so people did calm down with their relationships, press pause, you know, went with the flow, I guess, and then we did see an increase after that. So as soon as we were allowed to come out of isolation, then for sure we did see an increase, and probably because people were living together and they really didn't want to be living together, so it created a lot of pressure for them.
Yes.
But also from a financial point of view, people were very uncertain. So if we separate now, what am I going to be left with? Am I going to have a roof over my head? Exactly. What if our property's worth half of what it is now? And I agree for my former partner to retain the property. Am I going to sell myself short? So there was a lot of uncertainty there. So people definitely did hit the pause button. But I think it has kind of come back from there, and people are realising that, you know, if they're going to separate, perhaps now's the time, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future and how long do I want to stay with, you know, with this person for and stick it out. So, yeah.
So what would your advice be, Marie, if someone is experiencing, or they've got to a point where maybe they've tried everything, they want to take the next step? Obviously, they quite often come to me. The first thing they do is the real estate agent, their solicitor, to approach firstly just to see what they should be doing with their property. Of course, they also approach Meg as well. So we're all really intertwined in this whole deal.
We had the client, remember, this week that I went out to see, and I went to look at her property, and she's in a very affluent area on the Gold Coast. She wants to do something outside of the norm, so she doesn't want to have open homes because of her working hours. And whilst talking to her, it's never a good time to slip out the family law card or you know, the real estate agent card, but we got on quite well, and we had a conversation about how she was separating from her partner, and they were very amicable. She'd already told me that she'd been to see somebody or some government organisation, I can't recall which one, but in that situation she'd come to me. She hadn't spoke to an agent, she'd spoken to a lawyer. I mean, really, you know, is there a right way of doing all of this? And if so, what can we tell our listeners is actually the right way to go? Because in that situation, I did get the feeling from her that she was unsure about what she was kind of supposed to be doing, and she was kind of just going through the motions, whilst outside all the renovations and things are taking part.
There definitely is a right way. So the best thing to do is to speak to a family lawyer to get advice on that. But a few of the questions that I do ask revolve around the values of people's assets and liabilities. So if you can get in your mind what everything is worth, and if we're talking real estate, then you need to have an idea about what your property is worth. So if that means contacting an agent and asking for an appraisal, then you should definitely do that. But I wouldn't take it any further than that until you get that legal advice to find out what your entitlements are. Because then what we do as family lawyers is explain to the client their options. So, okay, what are you looking to retain? So what's important to you? Is the roof over your head and the family home the most important thing? Or is your income generating business the most important thing to you? Or is your self-managed super fund, commercial property, whatever it might be? Yeah. So working out what the most important thing is, and then working out how much you may have to pay the other person to be able to retain those assets. And then we look at going to a mortgage broker to look at any refinancing options, so seeing what you can afford really. And then when we look at all of that and we look at, yes, okay, a property needs to be sold, then that's when the real estate agent would step in with, of course, a stylist's advice to ensure that you present the property as best as you can to get the most money for your property. So that's essentially the process. But a lot of people do jump the gun and they see a real estate agent and then the sign is out the front before you know it. They haven't staged the property. The place has got the tenants in there with, terrible furniture or it's very untidy and they haven't really taken any of that into consideration. So
if we were talking to our listeners, what would the repercussions of that be in that instance, for example? So if they hadn't spoken to a family lawyer and they just spoke to Nicole and they hadn't done anything else apart from put the house on the market, what are the implications of that? What kind of things do we need to kind of make them aware of?
Well,
what they're letting themselves up for?
Yeah, quite a lot of things could happen, negative things, I guess. So, for example, they may list the property for sale and have it empty, unstaged, not looking great, auction it off, it gets passed in, but they've done a deal potentially, let's keep 50-50 of the property sale proceeds. Well, they thought the property was worth $1 million and then it gets passed in and the highest bidder was, $750,000. So they thought the property was worth $1 million, but, they're obviously a few $100,000 short. And then all of a sudden they don't agree for the 50-50 arrangement. So the deal can essentially fall over and then they have to start again.
Yeah.
That can create real tension between the couple and then that can just spiral things from there. So that's just one thing that can happen. Another thing that is quite common is properties are obviously sometimes owned by different people. So husband and wife might own it jointly, or the husband may have it in his name for whatever reason. It might be for tax purposes or what have you. And then they list the property for sale. Settlement is about to take place or has taken place. They haven't had any advice from a family lawyer. What happens when settlement takes place? Money needs to go somewhere. And for example, if the wife hasn't received any legal advice, the money may end up in the husband's bank account, which the real estate agent and their conveyancer is entitled to do. So they have then essentially put that money in the husband's account. He could go and then spend it on, I don't know, the horses or at the casino. You don't know. And then there goes that money. So getting advice on what to do there to ensure that you protect your part of the sale proceeds is really important as well.
Yes. To elaborate on that, we have had instances where the party just doesn't care. They just want us to get rid of the property because they want out of the relationship.
That's right.
They just want the house sold. So it's very important. I think we've touched on this previously in our other episode, is having that meeting with both parties up front to really try and get them the best possible outcome. Because at the end of the day, we will sell the property, but to get a good market-related price is extremely important.
Yeah, and especially in the market as it is today, like with COVID, you really still have got an opportunity on the Gold Coast to maximise that sale price.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that our sellers are absolutely taking advantage of that.
Definitely.
Everywhere else, probably COVID has had a much more detrimental effect. And we're very fortunate living on the Gold Coast that it hasn't, as far as the property market's concerned at the moment. I know that, the last month or so have been one of the busiest that we've had in a long time. And that's been partly to do with the fact that there was a silent part for a month or so. But, people that were holding off are now ready to sell, and they really do see the benefits in staging their home for sale because they want to maximise that sale price. But then there's also probably a lot of people that are holding off because they're wary of the market and they're not really sure where it's at. But I think that we can safely say at the moment that it's still definitely a very popular place to sell, and we are very fortunate. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say, like, in today's market, the Gold Coast out of everywhere in Australia is, like, really quite buoyant?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, do you think that if we're at the moment where we've got trades coming into houses, like the house that I was just referring to you about with that client, we're trying to do renovations on our house at the moment, so we're still going through that renovation process. And you've got tradespeople come into the house. They seem to be over-quoting.
Yes.
They're too busy. We had one guy that just on the phone outright said, unless you're interested in us doing the job for you, we're not going to come out and see you. And it's a $20,000 job to redo our driveway. And he's like, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of tradespeople out there that are phenomenally busy and they're making money out of this market that we're in at the moment. Are you finding that?
We're finding that as well, because in preparation for selling properties, we go around the property and besides staging, we ensure, does it need a paint? Do doors need to be fixed?
Yeah.
And we are experiencing that with tradespeople, really because during COVID, a lot of people were stuck at home, so they invested a lot into their properties and then decided we will start doing renovations, we will start doing some improvements to our properties. So started getting onto tradespeople, and that jilted the market quite a lot actually. So we're in that same boat now. It's quite difficult to find someone on the coast who's willing to take on a small job. So we're finding a lot of our handymen or people that maybe don't have jobs are adapting more, and they're able to go out now and assist us with an array of things at a lot of owners' properties, which is quite handy because as some people have lost jobs during this time, they've had to adapt and pick up on other skills that maybe they haven't used previously.
People are spending a lot more money in their property. So if they're not in a rush to sell, instead of going on holiday, which we're all a bit restricted to doing, they're spending money on their house. So it's been great for the economy, I suppose, in that respect, because there's lots more people, sort of enjoying their home and spending money on
Australia.
it.
You'll probably see it as well with styling. If you just everybody has gone to Kmart and just stocked up on home furnishings. And
because there's no stock. Or the stock has been lost in the sea because the containers have fallen off ships. And I mean, we've had circumstances whereby we're putting together interior design packages for clients and trying to get hold of certain stock. I know, Marie, when we've talked about preparing offices and you can't get hold of desks because they're sold out of everywhere because obviously COVID has sent everyone office space crazy and they want it to look amazing. So that's been a real kind of change in the marketplace, I suppose. You've got like 6+ weeks to wait for one piece of furniture. So certainly people have been spending money on their homes. Definitely.
It's a good thing. So, Nicole, we have this awesome brochure to do with preparing your property for sale. Can you tell us a little bit about what is in that brochure?
Yes. Look, it's a great brochure. Firstly, it includes the three of us, which is fantastic. So if you're wondering where to start in terms of selling your property, speaking to someone like yourself for legal advice, or preparing your home with staging, or what the process is to sell, it has all our details in the brochure. And then it's a step-by-step guide as to what you should be doing to the property. Should you be getting a build-in pest? What are the things you should be looking out for? So it's a pretty comprehensive booklet, and it just gives you some great pointers as to what to do and who to contact. And then, of course, our details are all on the brochure as well. If you want more specifics, you can contact us directly.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that, Nicole. And thank you so much for listening today. We are Lip Talk, and you can find out more about us and what we offer in our show notes. Bye for now.
Yeah, woo! Cheers!